The automatic doors of St. Catherine's maternity ward slid shut behind my husband Marcus as he walked out with his pregnant mistress, leaving me holding our newborn daughter while still recovering from 18 hours of labor. He thought I would beg him to come back, broken and desperate with a baby I could not afford to raise alone. Instead, I smiled and opened the envelope containing DNA test results that would destroy his perfect life, while the birth certificate in my other hand revealed surprises that would make him wish he had never betrayed the wrong woman. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of St. Catherine's maternity ward cast everything in that harsh, clinical brightness that makes even happy moments feel surreal. I was sitting up in the narrow hospital bed, my newborn daughter Sophia sleeping peacefully in my arms, when I heard Marcus's voice echoing down the corridor outside my room. He was speaking in the gentle, reassuring tone that I had once believed was reserved exclusively for me, but now I knew better. "Don't worry, baby," he was saying to someone who was definitely not me. "This whole situation will be resolved soon. Just give me a few more hours to handle the paperwork and tie up loose ends." Through the small window in my door, I could see him standing with his arm around a woman whose pregnancy was clearly more advanced than mine had been just 12 hours earlier. Victoria Sterling, 26 years old, blonde, beautiful, and carrying what Marcus believed was his second child. What he did not know was that I had been documenting his affair for the past 8 months, gathering evidence that would soon transform his moment of anticipated triumph into the beginning of his complete destruction. My name is Dr. Isabella Martinez, and until yesterday morning, I was a respected orthopedic surgeon at Chicago General Hospital, living what I thought was a stable, loving marriage with Marcus Rodriguez, a successful real estate developer who specialized in luxury commercial properties. We had been married for 7 years, together for 9, and I had believed we were building something lasting and meaningful together. The pregnancy had been planned, celebrated, and anticipated with the kind of joy that comes from couples who have waited until they felt financially and emotionally ready to become parents. Marcus had been attentive throughout the entire experience, accompanying me to every doctor's appointment, assembling the nursery with meticulous care, and expressing excitement about fatherhood that seemed genuine and heartfelt. What I had not realized was that Marcus had been living a completely double life for over 2 years, maintaining a secret relationship with Victoria Sterling, while systematically planning to abandon our marriage the moment our child was born. His strategy was calculated and cruel. He would wait until I was most vulnerable, physically and emotionally, then leave me to struggle as a single mother while he started fresh with his younger, presumably more pliable girlfriend. The betrayal had been revealed in the most devastating way possible. Marcus had received what he thought was a private phone call during my labor, stepping out into the hallway where he believed his conversation would not be overheard. But the combination of thin hospital walls and his own arrogance had allowed me to hear every word of his discussion with Victoria about their plans to relocate to Miami immediately after I gave birth. "She will be so focused on the baby and her recovery that she would not even realize I am gone until it is too late to do anything about it," Marcus had explained to Victoria with casual cruelty that revealed his true character. "By the time she figures out what happened, we will be settled in Florida with the new baby, and she can deal with the legal complications from a distance." The new baby. Victoria was apparently due to give birth within the next few weeks, meaning Marcus had been planning this timeline for months. He had calculated exactly when to abandon me for maximum emotional impact while minimizing his own legal and financial exposure. The man I had trusted with my heart, my home, and my future had been treating our marriage as a temporary arrangement while building his real life with someone else. But Marcus had made one critical error in his otherwise sophisticated planning. He had underestimated the woman he had married. Dr. Isabella Martinez was not the helpless victim he expected to leave behind. I was a surgeon who had spent years training to remain calm under pressure, think strategically during crises, and execute complex procedures with precision and patience. These skills had proved remarkably applicable to investigating and documenting infidelity. The first suspicious sign had appeared 8 months earlier when Marcus suddenly became protective of his phone and started working unusually late hours on projects that seemed to require extensive travel to Miami. His explanation about expanding his business into Florida luxury real estate markets had seemed plausible at first, but several inconsistencies in his stories had triggered my medical training in pattern recognition and diagnostic analysis. I had begun paying closer attention to his behavior, travel schedules, and financial transactions, initially hoping to discover that my suspicions were unfounded and that our marriage was as solid as I wanted to believe. Instead, I had uncovered evidence of a relationship that had been carefully concealed behind a facade of business expansion and professional networking. The breakthrough had come when I discovered that Marcus was paying rent on a luxury apartment in Miami's Brickell Avenue district, supposedly for client entertainment and business meetings. Further investigation revealed that Victoria Sterling was listed as the primary resident of that apartment, receiving monthly payments that were being disguised as consulting fees in Marcus's business accounting records. The apartment was not the only financial support Marcus was providing to his mistress. He had been paying for her health insurance, her car lease, her credit card bills, and numerous other expenses that collectively represented thousands of dollars per month in diverted household funds. Money that should have been contributing to our family's security and our daughter's future was instead financing his secret relationship. The medical records had been the most damaging discovery. Victoria Sterling was not just Marcus's mistress. She was also his patient, receiving obstetric care at a private clinic where Marcus was paying all expenses in cash to avoid insurance records that might reveal his involvement. The estimated due date on her medical chart indicated that she had become pregnant approximately 2 months after I had conceived Sophia, meaning Marcus had been actively planning to have children with both women simultaneously. This timeline revealed the true sophistication of Marcus's deception. He had not simply fallen into an affair that complicated our marriage. He had deliberately orchestrated parallel relationships with the intention of eventually choosing whichever situation offered him better advantages. Our marriage had been a backup plan while he evaluated whether Victoria might provide superior long-term prospects. The financial investigation had revealed even more disturbing patterns. Marcus had been systematically transferring money from our joint accounts into investment vehicles that only he could access, gradually reducing my financial security while building a separate asset base that would support his new life in Florida. Real estate properties that were supposedly owned jointly had been restructured to list only Marcus as the legal owner, using legal maneuvers that I had unknowingly authorized by signing documents he had described as routine paperwork. The most calculated aspect of his planning involved timing the abandonment to occur immediately after Sophia's birth, when I would be physically recovering from childbirth and emotionally overwhelmed by new motherhood. Marcus had calculated that this period of maximum vulnerability would prevent me from responding effectively to his departure, giving him time to establish residency in Florida and create legal complications that would make it difficult for me to pursue financial remedies or custody arrangements. But Marcus's strategic planning had one fatal flaw. He had never considered the possibility that I might be conducting my own investigation while appearing to be the trusting, devoted wife he expected me to remain. Every conversation about his business trips had been carefully recorded. Every financial transaction had been documented and analyzed. Every lie he told had been verified and cataloged for future reference. The birth certificate that I held in my hand contained surprises that would destroy Marcus's carefully constructed plans and expose the full extent of his deception to legal authorities who would ensure that his crimes received appropriate consequences. What Marcus did not know was that I had been working with a team of forensic accountants, private investigators, and divorce attorneys for the past 4 months, building a comprehensive case that would protect both my daughter's future and my Own financial security. The DNA test results in the envelope beside me would provide the final piece of evidence needed to complete Marcus's destruction. But that revelation would come later, after he had committed himself to abandoning his legal wife and newborn daughter, in favor of a relationship built on lies that would soon be exposed in ways he could never have anticipated. As I watched Marcus comfort Victoria in the hallway outside my room, both of them apparently believing they were moments away from beginning their new life together, I felt a calm satisfaction that comes from knowing justice is about to be served. Marcus thought he was executing the perfect escape plan that would leave me broken and helpless, while he enjoyed freedom and happiness with his younger girlfriend. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Instead, he was about to discover that he had tried to destroy the wrong woman. Dr. Isabella Martinez had spent 8 months carefully documenting every aspect of his betrayal, while preparing countermeasures that would ensure he lost everything he had worked to steal. The medical precision that made me successful in the operating room had proved remarkably effective in gathering evidence that would soon be presented in divorce court, criminal court, and professional licensing hearings that would end Marcus's career and financial security permanently. The automatic doors that had closed behind Marcus as he left with Victoria would soon open again, but when they did, he would be returning to face consequences that would transform his moment of anticipated triumph into the beginning of complete personal and professional destruction. The birth certificate contained surprises that would shock him, but the real surprise was that the woman he had abandoned possessed the intelligence, resources, and determination necessary to ensure that betrayal would be met with justice. Tomorrow, his perfect life would begin to collapse in ways he could never have imagined. Tonight, I held my daughter close and smiled, knowing that Sophia would grow up understanding that strength, intelligence, and careful planning always triumph over deception and cruelty. Marcus had taught me valuable lessons about trust and vulnerability, but he was about to learn much more painful lessons about the consequences of underestimating the wrong person. The fluorescent lights continued to cast their harsh brightness over the maternity ward, but everything felt different now. This was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of justice, vindication, and a future built on truth rather than lies. Marcus Rodriguez thought he had executed the perfect betrayal, but he was about to discover that perfection requires attention to details he had never bothered to consider. The surprises were just beginning, and they would all be his to experience. Dr. Isabella Martinez had not always been the kind of woman who could calmly orchestrate the destruction of a man who had betrayed her trust. The transformation from trusting wife to strategic investigator had been forged through years of medical training that taught her to diagnose complex problems, remain calm under extreme pressure, and execute precise interventions that could mean the difference between life and death. Isabella's journey to becoming one of Chicago's most respected orthopedic surgeons had begun in the immigrant community of Pilsen, where her parents, Elena and Roberto Martinez, had built a successful restaurant business after arriving from Guadalajara 35 years earlier. The Martinez family understood that success in America required not just hard work, but also strategic thinking, careful planning, and the ability to recognize opportunities that others might overlook. Elena Martinez had been the strategic mind behind the family's success, transforming a small taco stand into a chain of 4 restaurants that employed over 60 people and served as gathering places for Chicago's growing Mexican-American community. Her approach to business combined traditional values of family loyalty and community service with sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, customer psychology, and financial management. Mija, Elena had told Isabella during her teenage years. Intelligence without strategy is just potential. Strategy without courage is just planning. But intelligence, strategy, and courage together can overcome any obstacle that life presents. These lessons had shaped Isabella's approach to every challenge she encountered, from the academic rigor of pre-medical studies at Northwestern University to the demanding residency program at Rush University Medical Center. She had learned to analyze complex situations systematically, develop comprehensive plans for addressing problems, and execute those plans with precision even when facing enormous pressure. The medical field had provided excellent training for the skills that would eventually prove essential in documenting Marcus's betrayal. Diagnostic medicine required gathering evidence from multiple sources, analyzing patterns that might not be immediately obvious, and reaching conclusions based on objective data rather than emotional assumptions. Surgery demanded the ability to remain calm during crises, make critical decisions quickly, and execute complex procedures with steady hands and focused concentration. Isabella's specialization in orthopedic surgery had been chosen specifically because it combined her interests in problem-solving, precision work, and helping people recover from traumatic injuries. The field required not only technical expertise, but also the psychological resilience necessary to work with patients who were often facing life-changing disabilities and emotional trauma related to their physical limitations. Her reputation at Chicago General Hospital was built on more than just surgical skill. Isabella was known for her ability to communicate complex medical information in ways that patients and families could understand, her patience in explaining treatment options and realistic outcomes, and her commitment to ensuring that every patient received the highest quality care regardless of their ability to pay or their immigration status. The medical community had provided Isabella with professional relationships that extended far beyond the hospital walls. Dr. Sarah Chen, her closest colleague and friend since residency, specialized in forensic medicine and had extensive experience working with law enforcement agencies on cases involving domestic violence, financial crimes, and other situations where medical expertise intersected with legal proceedings. Dr. Michael Thompson, the chief of orthopedic surgery, had become both a mentor and father figure during Isabella's career development. His guidance had helped her navigate the challenges of being one of the few Latina surgeons in a field dominated by white males, while his connections throughout Chicago's medical and legal communities had provided access to resources and expertise that would prove invaluable during her investigation of Marcus's activities. The Martinez family had also provided Isabella with emotional support and practical wisdom that influenced her approach to both personal and professional challenges. Roberto Martinez, despite his quiet demeanor, possessed sharp business instincts that had enabled him to expand the restaurant chain while maintaining the authentic character that made each location a genuine community gathering place. Isabella's younger brother, Carlos Martinez, had followed a different path, becoming a cybersecurity specialist who worked with federal law enforcement agencies on cases involving financial fraud, identity theft, and other technology-enabled crimes. His expertise in digital forensics and electronic surveillance would become crucial resources during Isabella's investigation of Marcus's financial manipulation and communication patterns. The extended Martinez family network included aunts, uncles, and cousins who had established themselves in various professional fields throughout Chicago, creating a web of relationships that provided access to legal advice, financial planning, services, private investigation capabilities, and other specialized knowledge that traditional professional networks might not include. Isabella's marriage to Marcus Rodriguez had begun 9 years earlier during her final year of residency, when she was working 18-hour days and struggling to balance the demands of medical training with her desire to maintain some semblance of normal social relationships. Marcus had seemed like exactly what she needed: a successful, stable professional who understood the demands of ambitious careers and who appeared to share her values regarding family, community, and building something meaningful together. Their first meeting had occurred at a charity fundraiser for the Chicago Community Health Network, an organization that provided medical services to underserved populations throughout the city. Marcus had attended as a representative of Rodriguez Development Group, which had donated construction services for a new clinic in the back of the Yards neighborhood. The conversation that evening had revealed what appeared to be genuine shared commitment to using professional success to benefit the broader community. Marcus spoke eloquently about his company's involvement in affordable housing projects, community development initiatives, and partnerships with local organizations that served immigrant families and working-class residents. Isabella had been impressed by Marcus's apparent understanding of the challenges faced by first-generation professionals who were trying to honor their families' sacrifices while building careers in fields where they often felt isolated and underrepresented. His own background as the son of Puerto Rican immigrants who had built a small construction business in Humboldt Park seemed to create natural common ground and mutual understanding. The early years of their relationship had reinforced Isabella's initial positive impressions. Marcus was supportive of her career demands, understanding about irregular schedules and emergency calls, and genuinely interested in her work and professional goals. He attended hospital events and charity functions, developing friendships with her colleagues and demonstrating the kind of social integration that suggested long-term compatibility. Marcus's business success had provided financial stability that allowed Isabella to focus on her medical training without the economic pressures that burdened many of her fellow residents. His established professional network had also created social opportunities and community connections that enriched their shared life while supporting Isabella's integration into Chicago's broader professional community. The marriage proposal had come during Isabella's final year of residency, presented in a way that demonstrated Marcus's understanding of her values and priorities. Rather than choosing an expensive restaurant or elaborate public setting, he had proposed during a quiet evening at Elena Martinez's restaurant, surrounded by Isabella's family, and with her parents' blessing already secured through respectful, private conversations. The wedding had been a celebration that honored both families' traditions while reflecting Isabella and Marcus's shared vision for their future. The ceremony took place at St. Augustine Church in Pilsen, followed by a reception at the newest Martinez restaurant location, with guest lists that included medical colleagues, business associates, and extended family members from both sides. The early years of marriage had seemed to validate Isabella's trust in Marcus's character and commitment. He had been genuinely supportive during her transition from residency to attending physician, celebrating her achievements and providing emotional support during the challenging period of establishing her reputation and building her patient base at Chicago General Hospital. Marcus had also demonstrated what appeared to be authentic respect for Isabella's family and cultural background, learning Spanish to communicate more effectively with her parents, participating in family traditions and celebrations, and showing genuine interest in the restaurant business and community work that had shaped Isabella's values and perspectives. Their discussions about starting a family had begun 2 years into the marriage, approached with the same careful planning and mutual consideration that had characterized their other major life decisions. They had agreed to wait until Isabella's career was firmly established and Marcus's business had achieved sufficient stability to support a family comfortably. The decision to have children had been reached through extensive conversations about parenting philosophies, educational goals, financial planning, and the practical logistics of balancing demanding careers with family responsibilities. Marcus had expressed enthusiastic commitment to being an actively involved father, sharing childcare duties equally, and ensuring that their children would grow up understanding and appreciating their multicultural heritage. Isabella's approach to pregnancy had been informed by her medical training and her family's emphasis on careful planning and preparation. She had maintained detailed records of her health status, followed optimal nutrition and exercise protocols, and arranged her surgical schedule to minimize stress during critical developmental periods. Marcus had appeared to be equally invested in the pregnancy experience, attending every medical appointment, participating in childbirth preparation classes, and spending considerable time researching infant care, child development, and parenting strategies. His behavior had seemed consistent with someone who was genuinely excited about becoming a father and committed to building a strong family foundation. The nursery preparation had been a collaborative project that reflected their shared vision for their daughter's future. Marcus had personally designed and built custom furniture, incorporating elements that honored both families' cultural traditions while creating a space that was both functional and beautiful. The attention to detail and obvious pride he took in this work had seemed to confirm his emotional investment in their growing family. What Isabella had not recognized at the time was that Marcus's apparent commitment to their marriage and family was actually an elaborate performance designed to maintain her trust while he developed alternative arrangements that would better serve his personal interests. The skills that made him successful in real estate development included the ability to manage multiple projects simultaneously, maintain different relationships with various stakeholders, and present whatever image would be most effective for achieving his immediate objectives. The values that would guide Isabella through the challenges ahead were rooted in lessons learned from her family's immigrant experience, her medical training, and her commitment to using her professional success to benefit others. Elena Martinez had taught her that true strength came from the ability to remain calm during crises while developing strategic responses that addressed both immediate problems and long-term security. Roberto Martinez had demonstrated that success required not just hard work, but also the wisdom to recognize when trust was being abused and the courage to take necessary action to protect what mattered most. The restaurant business had provided numerous examples of situations where apparent partners or trusted employees had attempted to take advantage of the family's generosity, teaching valuable lessons about the importance of verification and documentation in all important relationships. Isabella's medical training had reinforced these family lessons while adding professional expertise in analysis, planning, and execution that would prove essential for documenting Marcus's betrayal and developing appropriate responses. The combination of cultural wisdom, family support, and professional capabilities had created a foundation that would enable her to transform personal devastation into strategic victory. The contrast between Isabella's starting point as a trusting wife and her eventual emergence as a formidable adversary reflected not a fundamental change in character, but rather the activation of capabilities that had always existed but had never been required for personal relationships. The same analytical skills that made her an excellent surgeon would prove remarkably effective for investigating financial fraud and documenting infidelity. The support systems that had sustained Isabella throughout her educational and professional development would provide crucial resources during the most challenging period of her personal life. Family members, medical colleagues, and community connections would all contribute expertise, emotional support, and practical assistance that would enable her to respond to Marcus's betrayal with precision and effectiveness. The foundation that Elena and Roberto Martinez had built, both in their business success and in their daughter's character development, would prove strong enough to support Isabella through the most difficult test of her resilience and determination. The values they had instilled would guide her decisions, while the professional capabilities she had developed would provide the tools necessary for ensuring that justice would be served and that her daughter would inherit a legacy of strength, rather than victimhood. The moment that shattered Isabella Martinez's faith in her marriage and initiated her transformation from trusting wife to strategic investigator occurred on a Tuesday evening in late October, 8 months before Sophia's birth. Isabella had returned home early from the hospital after completing a particularly challenging spinal fusion surgery, looking forward to a quiet dinner with Marcus and perhaps some time to discuss their growing excitement about the pregnancy. That was just beginning to show. The house was empty when she arrived, which was not unusual given Marcus's demanding schedule with Rodriguez Development Group. Their Lincoln Park brownstone, a beautifully restored 19th-century building that Marcus had renovated as one of his first major projects, usually felt warm and welcoming even when she was alone. But that evening, something felt different in a way that Isabella could not immediately identify. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable to someone trained in diagnostic observation. Small details were out of place in ways that suggested Marcus had left hastily rather than following his normal routine. His morning coffee cup was still on the kitchen counter, which violated his obsessive habits about maintaining clean surfaces. The mail had been scattered on the entry table rather than sorted into the organized piles he typically created. Most significantly, his home office door was slightly ajar, despite his usual practice of keeping it locked when he was not present. Isabella's medical training had taught her to pay attention to patterns and anomalies that might indicate underlying problems requiring further investigation. The same analytical approach that enabled her to diagnose complex orthopedic conditions made her sensitive to changes in familiar environments that others might overlook. The small inconsistencies in Marcus's usual habits created an unease that she could not rationalize away. The decision to examine Marcus's office was not made lightly. Throughout their marriage, Isabella had respected his need for privacy regarding business matters, understanding that real estate development involved sensitive negotiations and confidential client information that required discretion. Marcus had similarly respected her professional obligations, never asking about specific patients or medical cases that involved confidential information. This mutual respect for professional boundaries had been one of the foundations of their relationship, reflecting trust and understanding that had made their marriage feel mature and stable. Isabella had never felt any need or desire to monitor Marcus's communications or investigate his activities, because their relationship had seemed built on genuine transparency and shared values. But the accumulation of small anomalies over the past several weeks had created persistent doubt that medical training would not allow her to ignore. Marcus's travel schedule had become increasingly erratic, with trips to Miami that seemed more frequent and longer than his previous business patterns. His communication during these trips had become more sporadic, with explanations about client meetings and site inspections that felt less detailed and more evasive than his historical practice. The financial patterns had also begun showing irregularities that caught Isabella's attention during routine review of their household accounts. Credit card charges for restaurants, hotels, and retail purchases in Miami had appeared with increasing frequency, often in amounts and at establishments that seemed inconsistent with business entertainment or professional meetings. When Isabella had asked about these expenses, Marcus had provided explanations about client development and market research that seemed plausible but somehow incomplete. The pregnancy had added emotional complexity to Isabella's growing concerns about Marcus's behavior changes. The hormone fluctuations and physical discomfort of early pregnancy made her question whether her suspicions were based on genuine problems or simply the result of increased sensitivity and anxiety that often accompanied expectant motherhood. Medical literature described emotional volatility during pregnancy that could create relationship tensions where none had previously existed. Isabella had initially dismissed her growing unease as a normal response to the major life changes associated with impending parenthood. Many couples experienced relationship stress during pregnancy, particularly when both partners had demanding careers that left limited time for communication and emotional support. The logical explanation was that Marcus was feeling pressure about becoming a father and was channeling that anxiety into increased focus on business success that would provide financial security for their growing family. Standing outside Marcus's office that October evening, Isabella faced the first major decision that would determine whether her marriage could be preserved or whether she needed to prepare for a very different future. Opening that door meant crossing a boundary that could not be uncrossed, acknowledging that trust had been damaged enough to justify what felt like investigative surveillance of her own husband. The alternative was continuing to accept explanations that felt increasingly inadequate, while hoping that her suspicions were unfounded, and that Marcus's behavioral changes reflected temporary stress rather than fundamental deception. This path preserved the possibility that their marriage was experiencing normal challenges that could be addressed through communication and mutual support rather than investigation and confrontation. Isabella's medical training had taught her that avoiding diagnosis when symptoms suggested serious problems rarely led to positive outcomes. Patients who delayed seeking treatment for concerning symptoms often faced more severe consequences than those who addressed problems early. Even when initial investigations revealed difficult truths, The same principle applied to relationships where persistent patterns of concerning behavior required honest evaluation rather than hopeful denial. The decision to enter Marcus's office was made with the same methodical approach that Isabella brought to medical diagnosis. She would examine the available evidence objectively, document any findings that might require further investigation, and base her conclusions on facts rather than emotions or assumptions. If her suspicions proved unfounded, she would have peace of mind and could focus on addressing whatever legitimate stresses were affecting their relationship. The office itself reflected Marcus's personality and professional success in ways that had always made Isabella proud of his achievements. The custom-built desk was made from reclaimed wood, salvaged from one of his historic renovation projects, surrounded by architectural drawings and development plans that showcased his creative vision and business acumen. Awards and recognition from industry organizations demonstrated his reputation among Chicago's real estate professionals, while family photographs and personal mementos reflected his apparent commitment to their relationship and shared future. The computer on Marcus's desk was password protected, which was entirely appropriate for someone whose business involved confidential client information and sensitive financial data. Isabella had never asked for access to Marcus's electronic communications, just as he had never requested access to her medical records or hospital computer systems. Professional boundaries and personal privacy were important elements of maintaining individual identity within marriage. But the desk drawers contained physical documents that Marcus had apparently not considered sensitive enough to secure in. The locked filing cabinets where he kept important business records. Isabella's examination of these materials was conducted with the same systematic approach she used for reviewing patient medical histories, looking for patterns and connections. That might explain the behavioral changes she had observed. The first discovery was a stack of receipts from Miami establishments that provided much more detail than the credit card summaries Isabella had previously seen. The restaurants were high-end establishments in Brickell Avenue and South Beach, areas known for expensive dining and entertainment rather than business meetings or client development. The timing of these meals, often late in the evening and on weekends, suggested social rather than professional activities. The hotel receipts were even more concerning, showing charges for luxury accommodations that extended beyond the dates Marcus had mentioned for his business trips. Several receipts indicated stays of 3 or 4 days when he had told Isabella he would be in Miami for single overnight visits. The room charges included spa services, room service orders for 2 people, and other amenities that suggested leisure travel rather than business meetings. The retail purchases documented in the receipts painted a picture of activities that seemed entirely inconsistent with business travel. Charges for women's clothing at high-end boutiques, jewelry purchases at exclusive stores, and other luxury items that Marcus had never mentioned suggested either extremely generous client entertainment or personal purchases for someone other than his wife. Isabella's medical training enabled her to analyze these patterns with clinical detachment, setting aside the emotional implications to focus on objective evaluation of the evidence. The data showed clear patterns of behavior that were inconsistent, with Marcus's explanations about his Miami activities. The frequency, duration, and nature of these expenses suggested personal rather than professional motivations. The most damaging discovery was a folder containing printouts of apartment rental listings in Miami's most expensive neighborhoods. The properties were luxury units with price points that far exceeded what would be reasonable for temporary business accommodations. Several listings had been marked with handwritten notes about amenities, lease terms, and contact information that suggested serious consideration rather than casual browsing. One listing had been circled and annotated with specific comments about proximity to hospitals and schools, preferences that seemed entirely inappropriate for business accommodations, but highly relevant for personal residence planning. The apartment was a 2-bedroom unit in a building that offered concierge services, fitness facilities, and other amenities that suggested long-term residence rather than temporary business housing. The address notation included a contact name that Isabella did not recognize, Victoria Sterling. The handwriting was Marcus's distinctive style, but the name had never been mentioned in any of their conversations about his Miami business activities. A quick search of the property management company's website revealed that Victoria Sterling was listed as the primary contact for leasing inquiries about several luxury properties in the same neighborhood. Isabella's investigation of Victoria, Sterling through professional networking websites and social media platforms, revealed information that transformed her growing suspicions into devastating certainty about Marcus's betrayal. Victoria was 26 years old, a real estate marketing specialist who worked with luxury development projects throughout South Florida. Her professional profile described extensive experience in high-end property sales and marketing, with particular expertise in serving clients relocating from other metropolitan areas. The social media investigation revealed photos and posts that documented Victoria's lifestyle and social activities over the past several months. Several images showed her at Miami restaurants and entertainment venues that matched the receipts Isabella had found in Marcus's desk. The timing of these posts corresponded exactly with Marcus's business trips, creating a clear pattern of coordinated activities that could not be explained as coincidental. The most devastating discovery was a series of posts from Victoria's social media accounts that documented what appeared to be a serious romantic relationship with someone who was never shown in the photographs, but whose presence was clearly implied. References to weekend trips, romantic dinners, and shared activities painted a picture of an established relationship that had been developing over several months. The final piece of evidence was a photograph posted by Victoria that showed her wearing a distinctive necklace that Isabella immediately recognized. The jewelry was a custom piece that Marcus had claimed to have purchased for a client's wife as part of a business relationship development strategy. The necklace had appeared on their joint credit card statement 3 months earlier, with Marcus explaining that such gifts were standard practice in luxury real estate development. Seeing the necklace on Victoria Sterling's social media account eliminated any remaining possibility that Isabella's suspicions were unfounded, or that there might be innocent explanations for the patterns she had discovered. Marcus was not just conducting business in Miami. He was maintaining a serious relationship with another woman while lying systematically to his pregnant wife about his activities and intentions. The emotional impact of this discovery was overwhelming in ways that Isabella's medical training had not prepared her to handle. Professional crises in the operating room required immediate response and clear thinking, but personal betrayal created a different kind of shock that affected judgment and decision-making capabilities. The man she had trusted completely for 7 years had been living a double life that made their entire relationship seem like an elaborate performance. The immediate impulse was to confront Marcus directly, demanding explanations and accountability for the deception that had been revealed through her investigation. But Isabella's analytical training suggested that immediate confrontation might be counterproductive, potentially alerting Marcus to the discovery of his deception and giving him opportunities to destroy evidence or create additional lies that would complicate future legal proceedings. The pregnancy added another layer of complexity to the decision about how to respond to this discovery. Isabella was carrying Marcus's child, but she was also now aware that he was simultaneously involved with another woman who might also be part of his long-term plans. The implications for their daughter's future, their financial security, and Isabella's emotional well-being required careful consideration rather than immediate emotional response. The medical approach to crisis management involved stabilizing the immediate situation while developing comprehensive plans for addressing underlying problems that might require complex interventions. The same methodology could be applied to this personal crisis, gathering additional information to understand the full scope of the deception while preparing strategic responses that would protect Isabella's interests and ensure appropriate consequences for Marcus's betrayal. Isabella's family background had provided examples of how to respond to betrayal with strength and strategic thinking rather than emotional reaction. Elena Martinez had faced similar challenges when business partners had attempted to take advantage of the family restaurant operations, teaching valuable lessons about the importance of documentation, legal preparation, and patient planning before taking action that could not be reversed. The decision to begin systematic documentation of Marcus's deception rather than immediate confrontation represented the first step in Isabella's transformation from victim to strategic adversary. The medical skills that made her an excellent surgeon would prove remarkably applicable to gathering evidence, analyzing patterns, and executing plans that would ensure justice for the betrayal she had discovered. The inciting incident that began on that October evening would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to Marcus's complete exposure and legal accountability. But Isabella understood that achieving justice would require patience, precision, and careful planning rather than emotional response to the devastating discovery that had shattered her trust and changed her life forever. The door to Marcus's office had been opened, but more importantly, Isabella's eyes had been opened to the reality of her marriage and the challenges that lay ahead. The transformation from trusting wife to formidable adversary had begun, guided by the same principles of careful analysis and strategic planning that had made her successful in every other aspect of her professional and personal life. The 24 hours following Isabella's discovery of Marcus's betrayal represented the most critical period in determining whether she would emerge from this crisis as a victim or as someone who had transformed devastating personal experience into strategic advantage. Her medical training had taught her that the initial response to any crisis often determined the ultimate outcome, whether dealing with trauma patients in the emergency room or complex surgical complications that required immediate decision-making. Under extreme pressure, Isabella's approach to processing the evidence she had discovered reflected the same systematic methodology that made her successful in diagnosing complex orthopedic conditions. Rather than allowing emotional shock to overwhelm her analytical capabilities, she treated Marcus's betrayal as a medical case, requiring comprehensive evaluation, differential diagnosis, and strategic treatment planning based on objective evidence, rather than assumptions or emotional reactions. The first step involved creating a secure documentation system that would protect the evidence she had gathered while enabling systematic expansion of her investigation. Isabella understood that any legal proceedings resulting from this situation would require meticulous record-keeping and chain-of-custody protocols that could withstand scrutiny from opposing counsel, who would be motivated to discredit her findings through technical challenges. Using her medical research experience, Isabella established encrypted digital files that would serve as repositories for photographs, documents, financial records, and other evidence related to Marcus's deception. The organization system followed the same principles she used for complex patient cases, with chronological timelines, categorized evidence types, and cross-referenced connections that would enable comprehensive analysis of patterns and relationships. The photographic documentation of Marcus's office materials was conducted with the same precision Isabella applied to surgical photography, ensuring proper lighting, clear resolution, and multiple angles that would provide complete visual records of every relevant document. Each photograph was time-stamped and GPS tagged to establish when and where the evidence was collected, creating an audit trail that would satisfy legal evidentiary requirements. Isabella's brother Carlos proved to be an invaluable resource during this initial planning phase. His expertise in cybersecurity and digital forensics provided guidance on evidence preservation techniques, electronic surveillance methods, and legal protocols for gathering information that could be used in divorce proceedings or criminal investigations. Carlos's experience working with federal law enforcement agencies had given him practical knowledge about documentation standards and investigative procedures that complemented Isabella's medical background. The key to building a strong case is patience and systematic evidence gathering, Carlos explained during their first strategy session at Elena's restaurant, chosen because it provided privacy and security that their respective homes could not guarantee. Emotional reactions and premature confrontation usually result in destruction of evidence and lost opportunities to document the full scope of deceptive behavior. Carlos introduced Isabella to advanced techniques for monitoring electronic communications, tracking financial transactions, and conducting background investigations that would reveal the complete extent of Marcus's deception. The technical capabilities available through legitimate investigative tools were far more sophisticated than Isabella had realized, enabling comprehensive surveillance that could document activities across multiple jurisdictions and platforms. The financial analysis required expertise that neither Isabella nor Carlos possessed, leading to consultation with Maria Santos, a forensic accountant who specialized in divorce cases involving complex asset structures and hidden financial activities. Maria's background included both public accounting certification and law enforcement experience, providing the dual perspective necessary for gathering evidence that would satisfy both civil court requirements and potential criminal prosecution standards. Maria's initial review of Isabella and Marcus's financial records revealed patterns of monetary manipulation that extended far beyond the Miami expenses Isabella had discovered. The analysis showed systematic diversion of funds from their joint accounts into investment vehicles and business arrangements that appeared designed to reduce Isabella's access to marital assets while building Marcus's independent financial position. Your husband has been implementing a classic financial separation strategy for at least 18 months, Maria explained during their first consultation. The patterns suggest deliberate preparation for divorce proceedings, with assets being repositioned to minimize community property claims and maximize his financial advantages during settlement negotiations. The sophistication of Marcus's financial manipulation indicated planning that predated Isabella's pregnancy by several months, suggesting that his deception involved more than simple marital infidelity. The evidence pointed to systematic preparation for ending their marriage, with the pregnancy potentially serving as a complicating factor that required modification of his original timeline rather than representing the catalyst for his decision to seek alternative arrangements. Maria's analysis also revealed concerning patterns in Marcus's business accounting that suggested potential tax fraud, money laundering, or other financial crimes that could expose him to criminal prosecution. Beyond the civil consequences of divorce proceedings, the complexity of these arrangements indicated involvement of professional advisors who had helped structure transactions in ways that might violate federal regulations governing real estate development and investment activities. The legal consultation with attorney Jennifer Walsh provided another crucial perspective on Isabella's options for addressing Marcus's betrayal through formal legal proceedings. Jennifer specialized in high-conflict divorce cases involving professional individuals, complex asset structures, and allegations of fraud or misconduct that required coordination between family court proceedings and other legal remedies. Jennifer's experience with similar cases enabled her to anticipate the strategies that Marcus's legal counsel would likely employ to minimize his financial exposure and protect his professional reputation during divorce proceedings. This advanced knowledge allowed Isabella to begin preparing counter-strategies that would address predictable defense arguments while building comprehensive evidence to support her claims for appropriate asset division and spousal support. The prenuptial agreement you signed will complicate the financial aspects of your case, but the evidence of fraud and deception you're gathering could provide grounds for challenging its enforceability, Jennifer explained. Illinois courts have been increasingly willing to set aside prenuptial agreements when one party has engaged in systematic deception or hidden assets that were not disclosed during the original negotiations. The prenuptial agreement had been presented by Marcus as routine protection for both parties, ensuring that business assets built prior to marriage would remain separate property while providing clear guidelines for division of assets acquired during the marriage. Isabella had signed the agreement without extensive legal review, trusting Marcus's assurances that it represented standard practice for professionals with significant individual assets. Jennifer's analysis revealed that the prenuptial agreement contained provisions that were heavily skewed in Marcus's favor, with asset valuation methods and division formulas that would significantly disadvantage Isabella in the event of divorce. The agreement also included confidentiality clauses and dispute resolution procedures that could limit Isabella's ability to pursue certain legal remedies or publicize Marcus's misconduct. However, The evidence Isabella was gathering could provide grounds for challenging the agreement's validity based on fraud, duress, or failure to provide complete financial disclosure during the original negotiations. The systematic deception Isabella had discovered suggested that Marcus might have been planning divorce proceedings even during the time when the prenuptial agreement was being negotiated, which could constitute fraud that would invalidate the entire document. The private investigation consultation with Detective Robert Kim provided insights into surveillance techniques and evidence-gathering methods that would complement Isabella's own research efforts. Detective Kim's background included both police, investigation experience, and private sector work on corporate fraud cases, providing expertise in techniques that could document Marcus's activities without creating legal liability for Isabella. Detective Kim's assessment of the evidence Isabella had already gathered was encouraging, suggesting that her medical training had led her to follow many of the same protocols that professional investigators used for similar cases. The systematic documentation, photographic evidence, and financial analysis she had conducted provided a strong foundation for expanding the investigation using more sophisticated techniques. The key advantage you have is that your husband doesn't know he's being investigated, Detective Kim observed. Most people become much more careful about their activities once they realize they're under scrutiny, but right now he's continuing his normal patterns because he believes his deception is successful. Detective Kim recommended specific techniques for monitoring Marcus's communications, tracking his travel activities, and documenting his interactions with Victoria Sterling that would provide comprehensive evidence of the affair's scope and duration. The recommended surveillance methods were all legal and admissible in court proceedings, avoiding any techniques that might compromise Isabella's legal position or expose her to criminal liability. The coordination between these various professional advisors created a comprehensive strategy that addressed both the immediate crisis and long-term planning for protecting Isabella's interests during what would likely be contentious divorce proceedings. Each advisor brought specialized expertise that complemented the others, creating a team approach that maximized Isabella's chances of achieving favorable outcomes. The timeline for implementing this strategy required careful consideration of multiple factors, including Isabella's pregnancy, Marcus's travel schedule, the optimal timing for confrontation or legal action, and the coordination required between different types of evidence-gathering activities. The goal was to build the strongest possible case before Marcus became aware of the investigation, preventing him from destroying evidence or modifying his behavior in ways that would compromise the documentation effort. Isabella's medical background proved invaluable in managing the stress and emotional challenges associated with maintaining normal behavior while conducting systematic investigation of her husband's betrayal. The same emotional regulation techniques that enabled her to perform complex surgery during medical emergencies helped her maintain her composure during conversations with Marcus about routine household matters, pregnancy planning, and other topics that now carried additional significance given her knowledge of his deception. The pregnancy itself became both a complicating factor and a source of motivation for Isabella's investigation efforts. The knowledge that she was carrying the child of a man who was planning to abandon their family created enormous emotional pressure, but it also provided urgent motivation to ensure that her daughter would be protected from the financial and emotional consequences of Marcus's planned betrayal. Isabella's approach to managing the investigation while maintaining her demanding surgical schedule required careful time management and compartmentalization skills that drew on her residency training experience. The ability to focus completely on patient care during hospital hours while dedicating evening and weekend time to evidence gathering enabled her to maintain professional performance standards while building her legal case. The support provided by Isabella's family during this period was crucial for maintaining both emotional stability and practical capability to manage the multiple demands of her situation. Elena Martinez's experience with business betrayals provided valuable perspective on the importance of patience and strategic planning, while Roberto's quiet strength offered emotional support that enabled Isabella to maintain her focus on long-term objectives rather than immediate emotional satisfaction. The extended Martinez family network provided additional resources that proved valuable during the investigation phase. Cousins who worked in banking, real estate, and legal fields offered insights into industry practices that helped Isabella understand the technical aspects of Marcus's business activities and financial manipulation strategies. Isabella's medical colleagues, while not informed about the specific details of her personal situation, provided professional support that enabled her to maintain her patient care responsibilities while managing the additional stress of her investigation activities. Dr. Sarah Chen's friendship was particularly valuable, offering someone with medical training who could understand the challenges of balancing personal crisis with professional obligations. The initial phase of Isabella's response to discovering Marcus's betrayal established patterns of systematic evidence gathering, professional consultation, and strategic planning that would guide her actions throughout the remaining months of her pregnancy. The transformation from shocked discovery to methodical investigation represented the beginning of Isabella's evolution from victim to strategic adversary. The medical principles that guided Isabella's approach to patient care provided an effective framework for addressing this personal crisis with precision and effectiveness. The same commitment to thorough diagnosis, comprehensive treatment planning, and careful execution that made her an excellent surgeon would prove remarkably applicable to gathering evidence and building legal cases against sophisticated deception. The professional team that Isabella assembled during this initial planning phase would provide the expertise and support necessary for achieving justice and protecting her daughter's future. The combination of legal knowledge, financial analysis, investigative techniques, and family support created a foundation strong enough to support Isabella through the challenges that lay ahead, while ensuring that Marcus's betrayal would result in appropriate consequences rather than successful escape from accountability. The pivotal moment that would determine Isabella Martinez's future arrived on a cold December evening, precisely 6 weeks after her initial discovery of Marcus's betrayal and 3 months before Sophia's anticipated birth. Isabella sat in her car outside Chicago General Hospital after completing a complex cervical spine surgery, reviewing the comprehensive evidence file that her professional team had assembled over the previous month and a half of systematic investigation. The folder contained irrefutable documentation of Marcus's elaborate deception, including financial records showing systematic asset manipulation, surveillance photographs documenting his relationship with Victoria Sterling, and legal analysis, revealing the extent of his preparation for abandoning their marriage. The evidence was sufficient to ensure favorable outcomes in divorce proceedings and potentially criminal prosecution for financial fraud. But Isabella faced a critical decision about timing and strategy that would determine how this crisis resolved. The immediate option involved confronting Marcus directly with the evidence, demanding explanations and accountability for his systematic betrayal while attempting to salvage their marriage through counseling or other interventions. This approach offered the possibility of reconciliation if Marcus demonstrated genuine remorse and commitment to ending his relationship with Victoria Sterling, but it also risked alerting him to the investigation and providing opportunities to destroy evidence or implement countermeasures that could compromise future legal proceedings. The alternative strategy required Isabella to maintain her facade of ignorance while continuing to gather evidence until she could achieve maximum advantage during formal legal confrontation. This approach would ensure comprehensive documentation of Marcus's activities while protecting her strategic position, but it demanded enormous emotional strength to continue living with someone she knew was planning to abandon her during the most vulnerable period of her life. Isabella's medical training provided valuable perspective on decision-making under extreme pressure, particularly the surgical principle that hasty interventions often produced worse outcomes than carefully planned procedures that addressed underlying problems comprehensively. Emergency surgery sometimes required immediate action to save lives, but complex reconstructive procedures achieved better results when preceded by thorough diagnostic work and strategic planning. The pregnancy added profound complexity to this decision-making process, creating emotional urgency that conflicted with strategic considerations about optimal timing for confrontation. Isabella was entering her second trimester, experiencing the physical and emotional changes that made pregnancy both exciting and vulnerable. The knowledge that Marcus was planning to abandon her during or immediately after childbirth created desperate motivation to resolve the crisis quickly, but premature action could compromise her ability to protect her daughter's long-term interests. The consultation with attorney Jennifer Walsh had revealed that timing would significantly impact Isabella's legal position and financial outcomes during divorce proceedings. Illinois family law provided specific protections for pregnant women and new mothers, but these safeguards were most effective when supported by comprehensive evidence of misconduct that had been gathered systematically rather than reactively. The strength of your case depends not just on the evidence you have, but on how that evidence is presented and when legal action is initiated, Jennifer had explained during their most recent strategy session. Premature confrontation often results in settlement agreements that fail to address the full scope of financial manipulation, while delayed action can allow additional asset hiding or other defensive measures. Jennifer's experience with similar cases suggested that the optimal timing for legal action would coincide with Marcus's next extended travel period, when he would be physically separated from their shared residence and unable to access documentation or other materials that might need to be secured through court orders. This strategic timing would also prevent him from pressuring Isabella directly during the initial legal proceedings, reducing the emotional manipulation that often complicated high-conflict divorce cases. The financial analysis conducted by Maria Santos had revealed additional considerations that influenced the timing decision. Marcus's business activities included several major development projects scheduled for completion during the spring months, representing significant asset valuations that could be affected by the timing of divorce proceedings. Initiating legal action before these projects reached completion could maximize Isabella's community property claims, while delayed action might allow Marcus to manipulate project outcomes to reduce apparent asset values. Maria's investigation had also uncovered evidence suggesting that Marcus was preparing to relocate significant business operations to Florida, potentially claiming residency changes that could affect jurisdiction for divorce proceedings and complicate asset recovery efforts. The timeline for this relocation appeared to coincide with Sophia's birth, suggesting that Marcus intended to use the immediate postpartum period to implement major changes, while Isabella was physically and emotionally incapable of responding effectively. Your husband's strategy appears designed to create maximum disadvantage for you during the period when you will be least capable of protecting your interests, Maria had observed. The timing suggests sophisticated legal advice aimed at exploiting the vulnerabilities associated with new motherhood and medical recovery. This revelation transformed Isabella's decision-making calculus, making clear that delaying confrontation until after Sophia's birth would play directly into Marcus's strategic planning. The evidence suggested that he was counting on her being overwhelmed by new motherhood and physical recovery to accept whatever settlement terms he proposed, potentially under time pressure created by his relocation to Florida. The private investigation, conducted by Detective Robert Kim, had provided additional intelligence about Marcus's activities that influenced Isabella's strategic considerations. The surveillance had documented regular patterns of communication between Marcus and Victoria Sterling that suggested coordinated planning extending beyond their personal relationship into business and financial arrangements that could affect the timing of his departure from Chicago. Detective Kim's analysis indicated that Marcus and Victoria were preparing to launch a joint real estate development company in Miami, using initial funding that appeared to derive from assets that should have been considered community property in Isabella's marriage. This business venture represented another form of asset manipulation that could be addressed more effectively through early legal intervention rather than waiting until the business became operational. The longer we wait to initiate legal action, the more difficult it becomes to unwind complex business arrangements and recover assets that have been transferred to third parties, Detective Kim had explained. Financial fraud cases achieve better outcomes when intervention occurs, before the stolen assets become integrated into new business structures or investment vehicles. The surveillance had also revealed that Victoria Sterling was indeed pregnant, with medical records indicating a due date approximately 6 weeks after Isabella's expected delivery. This timeline suggested that Marcus was planning to be present for both births, potentially using the chaos and emotional intensity of this period to implement his transition from one family to the other, while both women were dealing with new motherhood. Isabella's family provided crucial emotional support during this decision-making period, but their advice reflected different perspectives based on their individual experiences and values. Elena Martinez advocated for immediate confrontation based on her business experience with betrayal, arguing that delayed action often allowed dishonest partners to cause additional damage, while honest parties suffered unnecessarily. Mija, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them immediately and act accordingly, Elena had counseled during one of their private conversations. Hoping that dishonest people will become honest rarely produces positive results, but decisive action based on clear evidence usually does. Roberto Martinez offered a different perspective based on his experience with complex business negotiations that required patience and strategic timing to achieve optimal outcomes. His approach emphasized gathering maximum information before taking irreversible actions, particularly when dealing with sophisticated opponents who had demonstrated ability to plan and execute complex deceptions. Carlos Martinez's cybersecurity expertise had revealed additional technical considerations that affected timing decisions. His monitoring of Marcus's electronic communications had detected increased activity related to document encryption, secure file transfers, and other digital security measures that suggested awareness of potential investigation or legal action. Your husband's recent changes in digital security practices indicate that he may be becoming suspicious about potential exposure, Carlos had warned. The window for covert evidence gathering may be closing, which argues for accelerating the timeline for legal action before he implements additional protective measures. Dr. Sarah Chen's perspective as Isabella's closest friend and medical colleague emphasized the importance of considering the health implications of prolonged stress during pregnancy. The psychological burden of maintaining deception while living with someone planning betrayal could affect both Isabella's well-being and her daughter's development, creating medical arguments for resolving the crisis as quickly as possible. The stress hormones associated with chronic anxiety and emotional turmoil can have negative effects on fetal development, Sarah had explained. From a medical standpoint, resolving this uncertainty might be more important for your health and your baby's health than optimizing the legal or financial aspects of the situation. Isabella's decision-making process incorporated all of these professional perspectives, while ultimately relying on the values and principles that had guided her personal and professional development. The medical oath to first do no harm suggested prioritizing approaches that minimized negative consequences for her daughter, even if those approaches involved personal sacrifice or reduced financial outcomes. The Martinez family values emphasizing courage, strategic thinking, and protection of future generations, supported taking decisive action based on clear evidence rather than hoping for improvements that seemed increasingly unlikely given the scope of Marcus's deception. Isabella's grandmother had often said that hoping for the best while preparing for the worst represented practical wisdom, but allowing hope to prevent necessary action represented dangerous naivety. Isabella's professional experience with complex medical cases had taught her that optimal outcomes usually resulted from bold interventions implemented at precisely the right moment, rather than conservative approaches that failed to address underlying problems comprehensively. The surgical principle of achieving complete tumor removal during initial procedures, rather than hoping that partial removal would prevent recurrence, seemed applicable to addressing Marcus's systematic deception. The turning point in Isabella's decision-making came during a routine prenatal appointment when Dr. Patricia Hernandez asked about stress levels and support systems during pregnancy. Isabella's careful responses about Marcus's supportive behavior and their excitement about becoming parents felt like lies that compromised her integrity and potentially affected her medical care. The realization that she was now lying to protect Marcus's deception represented a moral boundary that Isabella could not continue crossing without fundamental damage to her character and values. The same ethical principles that made her an excellent physician demanded honesty in all relationships, including the relationship with herself about the reality of her marriage and the need for decisive action. The final factor that determined Isabella's decision was a conversation with her unborn daughter during one of the quiet evening moments when Sophia's movements were most active. Speaking to her daughter about the kind of life and values she wanted to provide created clarity about the importance of demonstrating strength, courage, and integrity rather than hoping that problems would resolve themselves through patience and accommodation. "Your father has made choices that will affect our family for the rest of our lives," Isabella had whispered to Sophia during one of these conversations. "But I am going to make sure that his choices do not determine your future, or teach you that intelligent women should accept betrayal and deception from people who claim to love them." Isabella's decision was made with the same careful consideration and commitment that characterized her approach to complex surgical procedures. She would initiate legal action against Marcus immediately after the New Year holidays, coordinating simultaneous filing of divorce proceedings, asset protection orders, and other legal measures that would comprehensively address his systematic deception while protecting her daughter's inheritance and future security. The timing would coincide with Marcus's next scheduled business trip to Miami, providing optimal conditions for securing evidence and implementing legal protections before he could respond with countermeasures. The holidays would provide natural cover for any changes in Isabella's behavior or routine that might be necessary for final evidence gathering and legal preparation. The decision represented a fundamental transformation in Isabella's approach to her marriage and her future, shifting from reactive victim to proactive strategist who would use every available resource to ensure that betrayal resulted in appropriate consequences rather than successful escape. The same skills that made her an excellent surgeon would be applied to dismantling Marcus's deception with precision, patience, and strategic effectiveness. Isabella understood that this decision would initiate a period of intense conflict and legal complexity that would test every aspect of her strength and capabilities. But the alternative of continued deception and eventual abandonment during her most vulnerable period was unacceptable for someone with her values and responsibilities to her daughter. The medical principle that early intervention produces better outcomes than delayed treatment would guide Isabella's approach to addressing Marcus's betrayal. The evidence was comprehensive, the legal strategy was sound, and the timing was optimal for achieving maximum protection for her daughter's future while ensuring that systematic deception received appropriate consequences. The decision point had been reached, and Isabella Martinez had chosen the path that required courage and strength rather than hope and accommodation. The transformation from trusting wife to strategic adversary was complete, and the next phase of her journey would demonstrate that underestimating the intelligence and determination of a skilled physician represented a critical error in judgment that Marcus would regret for the rest of his life. The implementation of Isabella Martinez's strategic plan began on January 3rd, when Marcus departed for what he described as a critical business development trip to Miami that would determine the future expansion of Rodriguez Development Group. His explanation about potential partnerships with Florida investors and the need to secure financing for major projects provided perfect cover for Isabella to initiate the legal and investigative actions that would systematically dismantle his carefully constructed deception. Isabella's approach to executing her plan reflected the same methodical precision that characterized her surgical procedures, with each element timed and coordinated to maximize effectiveness while minimizing opportunities for Marcus to implement defensive countermeasures. The medical principle of achieving complete resolution during initial intervention, rather than accepting partial solutions that might allow problems to recur, guided her comprehensive strategy for addressing every aspect of Marcus's betrayal. The first action involved serving divorce papers and emergency restraining orders that would immediately freeze joint financial accounts and prevent Marcus from accessing or transferring marital assets. Attorney Jennifer Walsh had coordinated with the Cook County Family Court to ensure that all necessary documentation was filed simultaneously, creating legal protections that would remain in effect regardless of Marcus's location or attempts to challenge the proceedings. The legal papers were served at Marcus's Miami hotel by a private process server who had been provided with detailed information about his location and schedule through Detective Kim's surveillance network. The timing was calculated to occur during Marcus's scheduled business dinner with Victoria Sterling, ensuring that both would be present when he received notification of the legal proceedings that would destroy their plans for relocating to Florida together. Isabella's presence in the surgical suite during a complex spinal reconstruction procedure provided perfect alibi for her whereabouts during the initial legal actions, demonstrating her commitment to patient care while comprehensive legal machinery operated according to carefully orchestrated schedules. The ability to maintain professional focus during personal crisis reflected the emotional regulation skills that medical training had developed through years of high-pressure situations. The financial investigation conducted by Maria Santos escalated immediately following the service of legal papers, with forensic accountants beginning comprehensive analysis of all business records, bank statements, investment accounts, and other financial documents that court orders had made accessible. The scope of financial manipulation that emerged during these initial investigations exceeded even Isabella's informed expectations about the extent of Marcus's systematic deception. The analysis revealed that Marcus had been implementing sophisticated asset protection strategies for over 2 years, using multiple business entities, offshore investment vehicles, and complex trust arrangements to move community property beyond Isabella's legal reach. The total value of assets that had been systematically hidden or transferred approached $800,000, representing money that should have been available for their daughter's education, health care, and other essential needs. The business partnership agreements that Marcus had established with Victoria Sterling were structured to appear as legitimate commercial arrangements, but detailed analysis revealed that the initial funding for these ventures had been derived entirely from assets that belonged to Isabella's marriage. The Miami real estate development company that Marcus and Victoria had created was essentially funded by money stolen from Isabella's family, then restructured to appear as independent business activity that would be protected from divorce proceedings. The electronic surveillance authorized by court orders provided real-time intelligence about Marcus's immediate reactions to the legal proceedings and his coordination with Victoria Sterling regarding damage control strategies. The intercepted communications revealed panic and anger that contrasted sharply with the calm confidence Marcus had projected during his years of systematic deception. "This is impossible," Marcus had said during a phone conversation with Victoria that was recorded pursuant to court-authorized surveillance. "Isabella doesn't have the sophistication or resources to organize something this comprehensive. Someone with serious legal and financial expertise must be helping her, but I have no idea who or how she could have discovered what we were planning." The conversation continued with Marcus expressing disbelief that Isabella had uncovered evidence of activities he believed had been carefully concealed through professional legal and accounting advice. His assumption that Isabella lacked the intelligence or capability to conduct sophisticated investigation reflected the same underestimation that had made his deception vulnerable to systematic documentation and legal challenge. Victoria Sterling's responses during these recorded conversations revealed additional information about the scope of their coordination and the specific timeline they had established for abandoning Isabella during the postpartum period. The plan had included detailed arrangements for Marcus to be present during Sophia's birth, then leave within 48 hours for what Isabella would have been told was a business emergency requiring immediate travel to Miami. "We just need to accelerate our timeline," Victoria had suggested during one intercepted conversation. "The baby isn't due for another 10 weeks, which gives us time to implement the contingency plans we discussed for dealing with legal complications." The contingency plans that Victoria referenced included strategies for hiding additional assets, establishing residency in non-community property states, and creating legal complications that would discourage Isabella from pursuing comprehensive financial remedies. The sophistication of these backup strategies indicated that Marcus and Victoria had anticipated the possibility of discovery and had prepared multiple layers of protection for their activities. However, the legal team that Isabella had assembled possessed expertise and resources that exceeded Marcus's expectations about the opposition he might face during divorce proceedings. The combination of Jennifer Walsh's family law experience, Maria Santos's forensic accounting capabilities, and Detective Kim's investigation skills created a comprehensive response that systematically addressed each element of Marcus's defensive strategy. The private investigation expanded rapidly following the initial legal actions, with Detective Kim's team conducting surveillance operations in both Chicago and Miami that documented the full extent of Marcus and Victoria's personal and business relationships. The evidence gathering included photography, video documentation, financial transaction monitoring, and communication intercepts that created a comprehensive record of their activities and planning. One of the most significant discoveries involved documentation that Marcus had been using Rodriguez Development Group business accounts to pay for Victoria's living expenses, medical care related to her pregnancy, and other personal costs that represented embezzlement from his own company. The corporate accounting records showed systematic diversion of business funds for personal use, creating potential criminal liability that extended beyond the civil consequences of divorce proceedings. The medical expenses that Marcus had been paying for Victoria's prenatal care included sophisticated genetic testing and other specialized services that suggested both pregnancies had been carefully planned and monitored. The timing of conception and the coordination of medical care indicated that Marcus had been maintaining detailed oversight of both women's pregnancies while preparing to abandon Isabella for Victoria during the period when both would be most vulnerable. Isabella's approach to managing the emotional and psychological challenges of implementing her plan drew heavily on the stress management techniques that medical training had provided for dealing with life-and-death situations. The same mental discipline that enabled her to perform complex surgery while patients' lives hung in the balance proved applicable to maintaining composure while systematic evidence of betrayal was being documented and legal remedies were being pursued. The support provided by Isabella's family during this implementation phase proved crucial for maintaining both emotional stability and practical capability to manage the complex demands of legal proceedings while continuing her medical practice. Elena. Martinez's business experience provided valuable perspective on negotiation strategies and financial planning, while Roberto's emotional support offered the steady presence that enabled Isabella to maintain focus on long-term objectives. Carlos Martinez's cybersecurity expertise became increasingly important as Marcus attempted to implement digital countermeasures designed to protect his communications and financial activities from further investigation. The technical battle between Carlos's monitoring capabilities and Marcus's defensive measures represented a sophisticated conflict that required constant adaptation and innovation from both sides. The medical colleagues who provided professional support during this period were not informed about the specific details of Isabella's personal situation, but their friendship and collaboration created a stable foundation that enabled her to maintain excellent patient care standards while managing enormous personal stress. Dr. Sarah Chen's understanding of the challenges faced by women in demanding professional roles provided particularly valuable emotional support. The initial legal proceedings revealed several areas where Marcus's defensive strategies were more sophisticated than anticipated, requiring modifications to Isabella's approach and additional expertise to address complex financial structures that had been designed specifically to frustrate divorce proceedings. These challenges demonstrated the importance of flexibility and adaptation in executing comprehensive legal strategies against sophisticated opposition. The prenuptial agreement that Marcus had insisted upon during their engagement negotiations proved to contain provisions that were even more disadvantageous to Isabella than initial analysis had revealed. The document included asset valuation methods, dispute resolution procedures, and confidentiality requirements that appeared designed to minimize Isabella's financial recovery while protecting Marcus's business interests and personal reputation. However, the evidence of systematic fraud and deception that Isabella's investigation had documented provided strong grounds for challenging the prenuptial agreement's enforceability. Illinois courts had established precedents for setting aside prenuptial agreements when one party had engaged in fraud, concealment of assets, or other misconduct that undermined the integrity of the original negotiations. The coordination required between different aspects of Isabella's legal strategy created both opportunities and challenges that required constant communication between her various professional advisors. The family law proceedings, financial fraud, investigation, and potential criminal prosecution needed to be managed carefully to ensure that each element supported the others while avoiding conflicts or procedural complications. Isabella's pregnancy added complexity to every aspect of the implementation process, as her advancing condition created both time pressure for resolution and physical limitations that affected her ability to participate directly in certain investigative activities. The medical demands of the second trimester, including regular prenatal appointments and recommended modifications to her surgical schedule, required careful coordination with legal and investigative timelines. The discovery that Victoria Sterling was also pregnant created additional emotional challenges for Isabella, as the evidence of Marcus's systematic planning to abandon one family for another became increasingly clear and painful. The realization that Marcus had been carefully orchestrating parallel relationships with two pregnant women demonstrated a level of manipulation that exceeded simple marital infidelity and entered the realm of systematic psychological abuse. The financial implications of supporting two pregnant women simultaneously had required Marcus to increase his embezzlement activities and asset manipulation strategies, creating additional evidence of criminal behavior while also demonstrating the unsustainable nature of his deception. The mathematical impossibility of maintaining his lifestyle while supporting two families had necessitated increasingly desperate financial measures that left clear audit trails for forensic investigators. Isabella's learning curve during this implementation phase included developing expertise in legal procedures, financial analysis, and investigation techniques that complemented her medical background while expanding her capabilities for protecting her interests and her daughter's future. The intellectual challenges of mastering these new domains provided positive focus during an emotionally difficult period while building confidence in her ability to achieve favorable outcomes. The early results of Isabella's comprehensive strategy demonstrated that systematic preparation and professional expertise could effectively counter sophisticated deception and manipulation. The legal protections that had been implemented immediately prevented further asset hiding, while ongoing investigation continued to reveal additional evidence that strengthened her position for final resolution of the crisis. The transformation that Isabella experienced during this implementation phase reflected the emergence of capabilities and confidence that had always existed, but had never been required for personal relationships. The same intelligence, determination, and strategic thinking that made her an excellent surgeon proved remarkably effective for addressing complex legal and financial challenges that threatened her family's security and her daughter's future. The comprehensive scope of Marcus Rodriguez's deception emerged through a discovery that transformed Isabella Martinez's understanding of her situation from straightforward marital betrayal into something far more sinister and systematically orchestrated. The revelation came through forensic analysis conducted by Maria Santos, whose investigation into the financial manipulation had uncovered evidence of coordination extending beyond Marcus and Victoria Sterling into a network of professional accomplices who had facilitated systematic fraud spanning multiple years. The breakthrough occurred during detailed examination of Rodriguez Development Group's corporate banking records, which revealed patterns of financial transactions that indicated professional money laundering services rather than simple asset hiding motivated by anticipated divorce proceedings. The sophistication of these arrangements suggested involvement of specialists in financial crimes who possessed expertise far exceeding what would be necessary for routine marital deception. Maria Santos's analysis identified a series of shell, corporations, offshore investment vehicles, and complex trust arrangements that had been used to move money through multiple jurisdictions while obscuring ownership and preventing recovery through standard legal procedures. The technical complexity of these financial structures indicated coordination with professionals who specialized in helping wealthy individuals hide assets from government authorities, creditors, and family members during legal proceedings. Dr. Martinez, what we initially believed was personal betrayal appears to be part of a much larger criminal enterprise, Maria explained during an emergency consultation at her downtown office. Your husband has been working with individuals who operate sophisticated financial fraud schemes for multiple clients, using techniques typically associated with organized crime or international money laundering operations. The evidence revealed that Marcus had been introduced to these services through business relationships that predated his marriage to Isabella by several years. The criminal network had been systematically helping Rodriguez Development Group clients hide assets, avoid taxes, and circumvent regulatory oversight in ways that violated multiple federal statutes governing real estate development, banking, regulations, and international financial reporting requirements. Isabella's case represented just one element of a criminal conspiracy that involved dozens of clients and millions of dollars in illegal financial activities. The scope of the operation explained why Marcus had been confident about his ability to hide assets and avoid accountability during divorce proceedings. He believed he was protected by professionals whose expertise and resources would prevent Isabella from achieving meaningful financial recovery or legal remediation. The discovery of this broader criminal network required immediate coordination with federal law enforcement agencies whose jurisdiction extended beyond state family court proceedings into areas of interstate commerce, financial crimes, and international banking regulations. Attorney Jennifer Walsh arranged meetings with Assistant United States Attorney David Park, whose office specialized in prosecuting complex financial fraud cases involving multiple defendants and jurisdictions. Federal Prosecutor Park's initial assessment of the evidence indicated that Isabella's investigation had uncovered criminal activities that warranted extensive federal prosecution efforts, targeting not only Marcus, but also the professional network that had facilitated his financial crimes. The potential penalties for the charges that could be filed included decades of federal imprisonment and asset forfeiture that would exceed any recovery available through divorce proceedings alone. Mrs. Martinez, your systematic documentation has provided federal investigators with evidence of criminal activities that we have been attempting to prosecute for several years, Prosecutor Park explained. Your husband appears to be connected to a financial fraud network that has been operating throughout the Midwest, using real estate development projects as cover for money laundering and tax evasion schemes. The federal investigation revealed that Rodriguez Development Group had been serving as a conduit for illegal financial activities that extended far beyond Marcus's personal asset manipulation. The company had been accepting payments from clients who needed to hide money from various legal obligations, then using construction projects and property development activities to legitimize funds that had been obtained through illegal means. Isabella's marriage had provided Marcus with additional credibility and social connections that enhanced his value to the criminal network. Her reputation as a respected physician and her family's standing in Chicago's professional community had helped Marcus establish relationships with clients who required discretion and trustworthiness when hiding significant assets from government authorities or legal adversaries. The realization that her marriage had been systematically exploited to facilitate criminal activities created emotional devastation that exceeded the pain of discovering Marcus's affair with Victoria Sterling. Isabella understood that she had been unwittingly contributing to criminal enterprises that harmed other families and undermined the integrity of financial institutions and regulatory systems that protected honest citizens from sophisticated fraud. The federal investigation also revealed that Victoria Sterling's role in Marcus's activities extended beyond personal relationship into professional collaboration with the criminal network. Her background in real estate marketing included experience with offshore property transactions and international client services that had made her valuable for facilitating money movement and client coordination across multiple jurisdictions. Victoria's pregnancy had been strategically timed to coincide with Isabella's pregnancy, creating a situation where Marcus could use the chaos and emotional intensity of supporting two pregnant women to justify increased financial activity and unusual money transfers that might otherwise attract regulatory attention. The coordination suggested planning that extended years into the past and involved careful orchestration of personal relationships to support criminal objectives. The federal agents assigned to investigate this criminal network possessed expertise and resources that exceeded anything available through state-level divorce proceedings or private investigation services. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, who led the Financial Crimes Task Force responsible for the case, had extensive experience with international money laundering investigations and could coordinate with law enforcement agencies in multiple countries to trace hidden assets and recover stolen funds. Agent Torres's initial briefing revealed that the criminal network had been under federal surveillance for 18 months, but investigators had been unable to gather sufficient evidence for comprehensive prosecution until Isabella's systematic documentation provided the detailed financial records and communication intercepts necessary for building cases against multiple defendants. Your investigation has provided exactly the evidence we needed to dismantle this entire operation, Agent Torres explained during Isabella's first formal interview with federal investigators. The financial records you documented and the surveillance evidence you gathered will enable us to prosecute not only your husband, but also the entire network of professionals who have been facilitating these crimes. The federal investigation expanded rapidly to include examination of dozens of real estate projects, hundreds of financial transactions, and multiple business relationships that had been used to facilitate criminal activities throughout the Midwest region. The scope of the investigation required coordination between the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Revenue Service, Securities and Exchange Commission, and international law enforcement agencies with jurisdiction over offshore banking activities. Isabella's role in the federal investigation evolved from victim and witness to essential collaborator, whose continued cooperation would be crucial for achieving successful prosecution of the entire criminal network. Her medical background and analytical capabilities made her particularly valuable for understanding complex financial arrangements and identifying patterns that might escape notice by investigators without technical expertise. The collaboration with federal authorities required Isabella to maintain absolute secrecy about the expanded scope of the investigation while continuing to manage her advancing pregnancy and demanding surgical schedule. The additional stress of contributing to a major federal prosecution created physical and emotional challenges that tested every aspect of her resilience and determination. The federal investigation also revealed that Marcus's criminal activities had created substantial legal liability for Isabella, who could potentially face prosecution as an unwitting accomplice if investigators determined that she should have been aware of illegal activities conducted through joint financial accounts and shared business interests. The possibility of criminal charges against Isabella created urgent motivation for her continued cooperation with federal authorities, while also requiring sophisticated legal representation that could protect her interests during the prosecution process. Attorney Jennifer Walsh coordinated with Federal Defense Counsel to ensure that Isabella's cooperation agreement included comprehensive immunity provisions that would protect her from prosecution while preserving her rights to pursue civil remedies for the financial damage caused by Marcus's criminal activities. The legal complexity of managing both federal criminal proceedings and state divorce proceedings required careful coordination to ensure that each process supported rather than compromised the others. The revelation that Marcus's betrayal was part of a larger criminal conspiracy fundamentally changed Isabella's understanding of the challenge she faced and the resources that would be required for achieving justice and financial recovery. The support of federal law enforcement agencies provided access to investigative capabilities and legal remedies that far exceeded what would have been available through private legal action alone. However, the federal investigation also created additional dangers for Isabella and her unborn daughter that had not existed when the case involved only marital deception and financial fraud. Criminal organizations that facilitated money laundering and tax evasion often employed intimidation and violence to protect their operations from law enforcement intervention, creating personal security concerns that required professional protection services. The Federal Marshal Service implemented security protocols designed to protect Isabella from potential retaliation by criminal associates who might view her cooperation as a threat to their continued operations. The security measures included modifications to her hospital schedule, changes to her residential security, and coordination with Chicago Police Department regarding potential threats to her safety or her family's well-being. Isabella's family required extensive briefing about the expanded scope of the situation and the security precautions that would be necessary to protect everyone connected to her cooperation with federal authorities. Elena and Roberto Martinez demonstrated remarkable strength in supporting their daughter through challenges that exceeded anything their business experience had prepared them to handle, while Carlos Martinez's cybersecurity expertise became crucial for implementing digital security measures that would protect family communications from potential surveillance by hostile parties. The medical community at Chicago General Hospital also required careful management to ensure that Isabella's professional responsibilities could continue while maintaining operational security necessary for the federal investigation. Dr. Sarah, Chen and other close colleagues were briefed about general security concerns without receiving specific details about the criminal investigation, creating a support network that could provide professional assistance while maintaining confidentiality. Requirements. The complexity of managing federal criminal investigation proceedings while maintaining excellent patient care during advancing pregnancy required Isabella to develop new capabilities for compartmentalization and stress management that extended beyond anything her medical training had previously demanded. The intellectual and emotional challenges of contributing to major federal prosecution while preparing for motherhood created demands that tested every aspect of her personal and professional resources. The discovery that Marcus's betrayal was connected to organized criminal activity also revealed the inadequacy of Isabella's initial strategies for addressing the situation through conventional divorce proceedings and civil asset recovery. The sophisticated nature of the criminal network and the international scope of their financial manipulation required federal intervention and resources that private legal action could never have achieved. The transformation of Isabella's situation, from personal crisis to federal criminal case, represented both an opportunity for comprehensive justice and accountability, and a challenge that would require sustained commitment and courage over a period that could extend for years beyond the resolution of her immediate marital difficulties. The stakes had been elevated far beyond personal financial recovery, to include public safety and the integrity of financial institutions that served honest citizens throughout the region. Isabella's pregnancy added urgent motivation for resolving the criminal investigation as quickly as possible, while also creating physical limitations that affected her ability to participate in some aspects of the federal proceedings. The competing demands of advancing pregnancy, continued medical practice, and major federal criminal investigation required careful coordination and support from every element of her professional and personal networks. The revelation of the deeper criminal conspiracy had fundamentally changed Isabella's understanding of her marriage, her situation, and her future in ways that would require sustained psychological adjustment and strategic planning. The woman who had discovered her husband's affair 8 months earlier had evolved into a federal cooperating witness whose testimony would be crucial for dismantling a criminal organization that had been operating for years while victimizing numerous families and institutions. The challenge that lay ahead would require Isabella to maintain her cooperation with federal authorities through complex legal proceedings while protecting her daughter's safety and her own professional reputation during a process that could attract significant media attention and public scrutiny. The medical skills that had prepared her for life-and-death surgical procedures would prove essential for navigating the most complex and dangerous challenge of her personal and professional life. The transformation of Isabella Martinez's situation from private marital crisis to federal criminal investigation required comprehensive adaptation of strategies, relationships, and daily operational procedures that tested her capacity for learning complex new domains while maintaining excellence in her established professional responsibilities. The revelation that Marcus Rodriguez's betrayal was connected to organized financial crimes had fundamentally altered the scope of challenges she faced and the resources required for achieving meaningful resolution. Isabella's adaptation process began with intensive education about federal criminal procedure, evidentiary requirements, and witness protection protocols that would govern her participation in the prosecution of the money laundering network. Assistant United States Attorney David Park and FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres provided comprehensive briefings about the legal framework governing federal financial crimes investigations and the specific role that Isabella's cooperation would play in dismantling the criminal organization. The federal legal system operated according to different principles and procedures than the state family court system where Isabella's divorce proceedings were being conducted. Federal prosecutors required evidence that met higher standards of documentation and chain of custody, while federal judges imposed stricter requirements for witness testimony and expert analysis. Isabella's medical background provided valuable preparation for understanding these technical requirements, but significant additional training was necessary to ensure her contributions met federal prosecution standards. Agent Torres conducted extensive training sessions that taught Isabella advanced techniques for evidence collection, document preservation, and secure communication that would protect both the investigation and her personal safety during the extended period required for building comprehensive cases against multiple defendants. The training covered digital security protocols, surveillance detection procedures, and emergency response plans that reflected the serious nature of potential threats from criminal organizations under investigation. Dr. Martinez, your cooperation will be essential for successfully prosecuting this criminal network, but that cooperation must be conducted according to strict protocols that protect both the investigation's integrity and your personal security, Agent Torres explained during one of the initial training sessions. The individuals we are investigating have demonstrated willingness to use intimidation and violence when their operations are threatened by law enforcement intervention. The security protocols implemented by the Federal Marshal Service required significant modifications to Isabella's daily routines, professional activities, and family relationships that affected every aspect of her life during the final months of her pregnancy. The security measures included electronic monitoring of her residence and hospital workspace, coordination with Chicago Police Department regarding potential threats, and establishment of emergency communication procedures that would enable immediate law enforcement response if dangerous situations developed. Isabella's medical practice at Chicago General Hospital required careful coordination with federal security requirements to ensure that patient care could continue at optimal levels, while maintaining operational security necessary for protecting the criminal investigation. Hospital administration was briefed about general security concerns without receiving specific details about the federal investigation. Creating support systems that could provide professional assistance while maintaining confidentiality requirements is essential for prosecution success. Dr. Patricia Williams, the Chief of Staff at Chicago General Hospital, demonstrated remarkable leadership in facilitating necessary accommodations for Isabella's situation while protecting patient care standards and hospital operations from potential disruption. The security arrangements included modifications to Isabella's surgical schedule, changes to her office access procedures, and coordination with hospital security personnel regarding unusual activities or suspicious individuals who might pose threats to staff or patients. The adaptation of Isabella's surgical practice to accommodate federal cooperation requirements created both challenges and opportunities for professional development that expanded her capabilities beyond traditional medical training. The analytical skills required for federal evidence analysis complemented her diagnostic expertise, while the stress management techniques necessary for witness protection enhanced her ability to maintain optimal performance during complex surgical procedures. Isabella's relationship with her legal team required substantial restructuring to accommodate the coordination necessary between state divorce proceedings and federal criminal prosecution. Attorney Jennifer Walsh worked closely with federal prosecutors to ensure that Isabella's cooperation agreement protected her interests in both legal proceedings, while maximizing the effectiveness of her testimony against the criminal network that had victimized her family. The complexity of managing simultaneous legal proceedings in different jurisdictions created challenges that required sophisticated coordination and communication between multiple legal teams representing Isabella's various interests. The divorce proceedings needed to be managed carefully to avoid compromising the federal criminal investigation, while the federal cooperation needed to be structured to support rather than undermine Isabella's financial recovery through state family court processes. Forensic accountant Maria Santos played an increasingly crucial role as federal investigators expanded their analysis of the money laundering network's operations and financial structures. Maria's expertise proved invaluable for helping federal agents understand the technical aspects of real estate development financing and identifying patterns of illegal financial activity that had been concealed within legitimate business transactions. The federal investigation revealed that Rodriguez Development Group had been serving as a central hub for financial crimes involving dozens of other businesses and hundreds of individual clients who had used Marcus's services to hide assets from government authorities, creditors, and family members during legal proceedings. The scope of illegal activity exceeded initial estimates and included violations of banking regulations, securities laws, tax codes, and international financial reporting requirements. Isabella's role in the federal investigation evolved from providing evidence about her personal victimization to serving as a technical consultant who could help investigators understand the business operations and client relationships that had facilitated systematic criminal activity. Her medical training provided analytical capabilities that complemented the law enforcement expertise of federal agents, creating collaborative relationships that enhanced the effectiveness of the investigation. The collaboration with federal authorities required Isabella to develop new skills for managing complex multi-jurisdictional legal proceedings while maintaining confidentiality about sensitive investigative activities that could affect numerous ongoing criminal cases. The intellectual challenges of contributing to major federal prosecution efforts provided positive focus during an emotionally difficult period while building confidence in her ability to achieve meaningful justice for the systematic betrayal she had experienced. Federal Prosecutor Park's strategy for prosecuting the money laundering network required coordination of evidence from multiple sources and jurisdictions that would demonstrate the scope and sophistication of criminal activities, while proving individual culpability for each defendant involved in the conspiracy. Isabella's systematic documentation provided crucial evidence for establishing patterns of criminal behavior and demonstrating the intentional nature of illegal financial activities. The federal prosecution strategy included provisions for asset forfeiture and victim restitution that could provide financial recovery, far exceeding what would be available through state divorce proceedings alone. The criminal conspiracy had involved millions of dollars in illegal financial activity, creating opportunities for comprehensive asset recovery that would ensure appropriate compensation for victims while deterring similar criminal enterprises. In the future, Isabella's pregnancy created both urgency for resolving the federal investigation before her delivery date and physical limitations that affected her ability to participate in certain investigative activities. The medical demands of advancing pregnancy required careful coordination with federal proceedings to ensure that her health and her daughter's development were not compromised by the additional stress of major criminal investigation. Dr. Susan Chen's friendship and professional support became increasingly important as Isabella navigated the complex demands of federal cooperation while maintaining optimal prenatal care and surgical performance standards. Dr. Chen's understanding of the unique challenges faced by women in demanding professional roles provided valuable guidance for managing competing priorities and maintaining personal well-being during extraordinary circumstances. The family support provided by Elena and Roberto Martinez required adaptation to accommodate the security requirements and confidentiality restrictions associated with federal criminal investigation. The Martinez family's restaurant business needed to implement additional security measures and modified operational procedures that would protect Isabella and her family from potential threats, while maintaining normal business operations that supported dozens of employees and their families. Carlos Martinez's cybersecurity expertise became increasingly valuable as federal investigators implemented sophisticated electronic surveillance and communication monitoring systems designed to track the criminal network's activities while protecting the investigation from potential compromise. Carlos's technical knowledge enabled him to serve as liaison between federal agents and the Martinez family regarding digital security measures and communication protocols. The revelation that Victoria Sterling's pregnancy was also connected to the criminal conspiracy created additional emotional challenges for Isabella, as she understood that Marcus had been using both women's pregnancies as cover for increased criminal activity and financial manipulation. The coordination suggested planning that extended years into the past and involved systematic exploitation of personal relationships to facilitate professional criminal objectives. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.